In 2003, the United Nations convened the World Summit on the Information Society. The core mandate established in Geneva was to build a globally inclusive, people-centric information society. Since 2003, global connectivity surged from 16% to 5.4 billion people today. But this expanding infrastructure is hitting sovereign borders, fracturing the web along strict national lines. In 2024 alone, the Internet Society recorded 128 government-mandated Internet shutdowns. In December 2025, the United Nations will convene the highly anticipated WSIS Plus 20 review. The debate will focus directly on who controls the architecture of the Internet moving forward. The original consensus relied on a multi-stakeholder model, distributing power among governments, private businesses, and technical communities. Now, a competing approach called state-centric multilateralism seeks to place strict sovereign control over digital infrastructure. This jurisdictional friction threatens the globally interoperable protocols that allow data to flow reliably from one country to another. The 20-year review is a structural stress test. It will determine whether the Internet operates as a shared global resource or splinters into isolated state-controlled silos. The 2005 Tunis Agenda formalized the multi-stakeholder model. It treats Internet governance as a shared ecosystem requiring simultaneous technical, economic, and social coordination. To maintain routing paths, allocate IP addresses, and set standards, states must work directly alongside the private sector, civil society advocates, and technical engineers. We can see this in Internet Exchange Points, or IXPs. Over a decade, stakeholders expanded IXPs in Africa from 19 to 46 facilities. These facilities allow direct interconnection, keeping traffic local. This reduces international transit costs by millions annually and improves service speed across jurisdictions. A second example is the mutually agreed norms for routing security, or manners, protecting the Border Gateway Protocol from traffic hijacking and route leaks. Originally started by a small group of network operators, manners grew to over 1,000 participants. Internet service providers, cloud operators, and vendors adopted these security protocols voluntarily without a single international treaty mandating their use. Much of this consensus building relies on the Internet Governance Forum, or IGF. Housed under the United Nations, the IGF operates as a non-binding platform where differing stakeholder groups reduce communication barriers, debate policy, and align on technical standards without the pressure of formalized treaty negotiations. The physical infrastructure that routes data globally and reduces consumer costs operates entirely on cross-border technical consensus. The multi-stakeholder model proves highly effective for maintaining the core functionality of the web. If the technical consensus effectively routes data and scales infrastructure, we must examine why the broader governance model is currently fracturing. A primary driver is corporate concentration. A few massive entities have established dominance in data aggregation, creating centralized bottlenecks. In parallel, state actors are asserting jurisdiction, deploying firewalls, and enforcing strict data localization laws that carve the network into isolated territories. Digital divides are no longer defined strictly by the absence of fiber optic cables. Today, inequality is driven by unequal access to data resources and increasing legislative threats to personal encryption. As artificial intelligence and large-scale data systems mature, states are defaulting to sovereign control mechanisms to regulate them, rather than relying on distributed stakeholder consensus.
The UN E-Government Development Index tracks digital public services. Developed nations score highly, while least developed countries lag significantly. Breaking this down shows expanding gaps in human capital and telecom infrastructure. Deploying advanced systems without basic connectivity actively widens structural inequalities. Centralizing digital services under state control, while failing to secure equitable access, inherently narrows the civic space. It leaves unconnected or marginalized populations highly vulnerable to surveillance and political exclusion. Therefore, the 67% global connectivity metric is incomplete. Without equitable data governance and human rights protections, infrastructure can become a mechanism for state control. Faced with the limitations of both corporate monopolies and state-centric controls, local actors are architecting alternative digital solutions ahead of the WSIS review. One approach is the deployment of localized community networks. These systems are built and operated by the communities they serve, targeting remote or marginalized areas. By pooling local resources and utilizing open-source hardware, These grassroots networks establish sustainable internet access without relying on traditional, profit-driven telecom monopolies. We see similar community-led deployments succeeding in extreme environments where commercial routing is deemed financially unviable. Operating at the opposite end of the scale is India's Digital Public Infrastructure, or DPI. This diagram shows how it functions. Modular building blocks for identity, payments, and data sharing assemble into a unified national technology stack. DPI operates as a national-level implementation of the multi-stakeholder approach. The state provides the open foundational protocols while intentionally avoiding a monopoly on the services built upon them. Because the architecture is open and interoperable, civil society organizations and private businesses can rapidly build inclusive, localized services, from digital education tools to microfinancing, directly on top of the public rails. Whether deployed at the village scale through community networks or at the national scale through digital public infrastructure, the most resilient systems share a common trait: they distribute agency rather than centralizing power. The history of the last 2 decades yields a conclusion: the Internet's ability to route traffic and scale globally cannot survive rigid multilateral state treaties. This timeline illustrates the current policy window. It maps the original 2003 and 2005 summits to the upcoming December 2025 WSIS +20 review, which will now intersect with the implementation of the Global Digital Compact. Navigating this juncture does not require establishing new, duplicative UN institutions that siphon resources from actual implementation. Instead, the mandate is to apply granular multi-stakeholderism directly to existing WSIS action lines, explicitly assigning responsibilities to technical experts, civil society, and state regulators. We must integrate modern requirements for artificial intelligence and cross-border data governance into these established frameworks, backed by rigorous, measurable compliance indicators. Maintaining this technical and policy alignment relies absolutely on renewing and defending the mandate of the Internet Governance Forum. Securing the digital public domain for the next 20 years requires rejecting state-driven fragmentation and enforcing a standard where technical infrastructure metrics are strictly evaluated by their ability to uphold human rights.